Jimny. Jimny Cricket. Wasn't that the name of some squeaky voiced critter in a schmaltzy Walt Disney thing? I don't know. Anyway, in this context, Jimny is the name of Suzuki's little tiny off-roader, also a squeaky voiced wee critter. That's unfair, really. I mean, a 16-valve, 1.3-litre little engine is hardly likely to sound fruity and deep-chested, is it? At least it manages to chirp out about 79 bhp, which isn't bad, especially in a car weighing no more than a packet of fags. Trouble is, it's not much bigger than a packet of fags either. Small is definitely what it's about here. And once you've got over that, well, it's not too bad. Some people buy their 4x4s for the commanding driving position, others for the sheer bulk, the sheer presence of them. Well, when I say others, I mean men who were bullied at school and neurotic women who seem to confuse the school run with Vietnam. But this is not one of those 4x4s. This doesn't so much loom up menacingly behind in your rearview mirror when you're sat in traffic as it sneaks up, taps you on the shoulder and says, "Excuse me," in a squeaky little voice. It certainly isn't a frightening vehicle. In fact, if you were to look in your rearview mirror, you might just catch a view of the top of the head of the person driving it, and that's about it. Unless you're going to work on a go-kart, of course. Really, to get into this thing, you've got to be smiling before you even climb on board, smiling before you drive it. And the fact that it looks so friendly helps there. So does this. I learnt this trick in a car park yesterday. Watch. Boom! Unusually, I'm going to tell you the price of this car early on, and that's because I reckon it's essential when you're assessing it as a purchase. And the reason is all Suzuki Jimnys come as standard with power-assisted steering, electric front windows, electric door mirrors, twin airbags, side impact bars. In fact, there's hardly anything you can really buy and spend your money on to add on to this as an optional extra. And so the price for these things, well, that's the really good news. For the manual gearbox version, it's £9,995 on the road. And for this, the automatic, £10,870. Now that's super mini territory. So, comparing this with its competition, what can the Super Minis do that it can't? Well, you might say parking. In fact, it's a cinch in this. The turning circle is amazing. Driving is usually a good point in the Super Minis, just as it is in this. In fact, it's immense fun. Agreed, it does roll a little bit when it corners, and I can't say that I forgot entirely those disastrous toppling incidents of some of the earlier Suzuki Jeeps. But actually, they've sorted this so that the rear end will come round and it's far more likely to swap ends before ever it'll roll over, which I'm sure is a kind of comfort somewhere. Super Minis are also economical, of course. Well, you can expect this to return over 34 miles per gallon average. 1.3 16 valve, you'd expect it to be pretty good for that. So in fact, there's very little. Boot space, perfectly reasonable. It's small, but then it's a small car. And even car makers have to obey the laws of physics. Looking at it another way then, what can this do that the Super Minis can't? Well, I'll tell you. We've got a lever down here, and it can do this. We just changed into four-wheel drive. It's even got a low transfer box, so if the going gets really bumpy, your little Suzuki Jimny can keep going. Now you do that in a Super Mini? I don't think so. I don't imagine it's going to pose a real threat to Land Rovers, Land Cruisers and 4-tracks. But remember, Suzuki have been making mini leisure 4x4s now for 30 years, with the SJ, Samurai and Vitara to their name, so they should have got the hang of it by now. David Hull is a stable manager and uses a variety of vehicles in his day-to-day work.
Right, I'm the stable manager here. I do the day-to-day running of the yard, care of the horses. I usually use a quad bike for most of my daily chores. I don't use anything as grand as this. But on the other hand, I quite often use a Range Rover towing a horse box to go to shows. It's not a bad little toy, really. It's not going to pull many huge loads, but it's not a bad little toy. Another good thing about this little baby, it's got plenty of leg room. I'm 6 foot and I've got plenty of stretchy room here.
Well, it might be a bit of a lightweight and it might have somewhat excessive noise at motorway speeds, but it feels well put together. Most of it's made from galvanised steel, so it should last forever anyway. If you're looking for a budget 4x4 for 10 grand, you might want to consider buying second hand and getting something perhaps a little more substantial. But if you're in the market for a second car or just for a small car that's got ample room in the back, that looks a little bit different, and that also means come the winter snows, you certainly will not be stuck, then I'd say this has got to be on your list. I know it would be on mine.